Hello. All right, for database today, a few things I want to go over. So first up, the project. I've extended it to April 7th. Originally, it was supposed to be due April 3rd. Pretty much self-explanatory. We've lost so much time in the semester this year, and we have these days available, so might as well take advantage of them. All right, so the lesson I'm going to do today is going to be on creating reports in Microsoft Access. So this shouldn't really be that new to you guys, because creating reports is quite similar to creating forms. There's a lot of similarities obviously between them in terms of the components that we drag and drop onto our design view to basically create our reports and forms. And both reports and forms also pull data from tables. Probably the one main difference is that usually a form is responsible for adding records or updating them, where a report often will pull data from a query, and then we'll basically just display it in a nice fashion to the user. And also it's important that reports are set up in a manner where they can be printed fairly easily. Okay, so basically for today's lesson, once we get into it, I'm basically just gonna work through a bunch of steps and create a couple of reports. And I've got the resources posted on D2L, so you guys can follow along and do the same, create the same reports. All right, and in terms of the project, now that we're going to cover reports, we've pretty much covered all of the content that's required for the project. Really, the only outstanding component is some of the macros that you have to create. So, for example, there's a switchboard we have to create for our reports that has a lot of different options, and based on those options, we need to modify the report and how it's generated. And to do that is fairly sophisticated macros are needed. So later on this week, I'll be guiding you guys through some of that. Okay, well let's get started on creating these reports. All right. So first up, how about I go before I forget, and I will add a new news item, just explaining that the course project has been extended. Right, so. All right, perfect. Okay. So the lecture material, or the material needed to create these forms, basically it's just an Access database, and then I've got some screenshots to go along with the steps I'm going to take creating these forms. So basically, if you go to lectures and database March 27th, okay. I have this zipped file here, so I'm just downloading that. All right, so unzip this. All right, so the database here is called Bavant Publishing, so it's basically a bookstore. You've got book salespeople and customers, tables, for example, inside this database. And then for each of the exercises I'm going to do, I've basically got the steps inside these folders. So if you want, you can go back later and then follow along each of the steps that I'm going to show you here. So I'll just open up this database. And as I said, we have 4 tables here. There's a whole bunch of queries. We don't need to worry about that. There's already some forms and reports there. We're just basically just going to create two new reports. Okay, so I'm going to follow along the book here that I have that demonstrates how to build these reports. Now, the first step, though, is I have to create 2 queries. And the reason being that the reports I'm going to use are going to pull data from these queries. So that's a pretty common operation, that you're going to create a report. It's possible you might pull data directly from a table, but that's, that's a little bit boring, right? Usually you're going to want to, filter the results or join some tables together. So for that, you're going to need to do a query. All right, so we've done this before. So basically creating a simple query, I go to the Create tab up here on my ribbon in Access, and I'm gonna go to Query Design. And now it's just a case of I'm gonna pick the tables that I want to use in my query. So let's see what it says here. It wants me to double click the book rep table. And what else? And the customer table. So I've got those two tables added, and that's good. Okay, so I'll close that, and now I'm basically just going to go through and pick the various fields from the tables that I'm going to add into my query. All right, so I'm going to get the book rep number, so I can just double click that book rep number, first name, last name. From the book rep table, and then I'm also going to get the customer number, the customer name, street, city, state, postal code. Okay, pretty much everything. Like they could just say everything. They're giving me them one at a time. Resources needed. Okay, so I've got that. Amount paid. And current due fields. I think that's everything. Okay. All right, so I'm going to save this query, and it wants me to save this query as book reps and customers. All right, there we go. Done. Okay, the next query I'm going to create is basically related to a couple other tables. I have these tables, seminar and seminar offerings. So let's close the query I just created. And once again, I'm going to go to my Create tab. I'm going to click on Query Design. And the tables this time I want are going to be seminar and seminar offerings. All right. And let's see here, what attributes do I want from these two tables? So I want customer number, and this is from seminar offerings. I want seminar code, and I want seminar description, and I want total hours and hours spent. Okay. Okay, so the next step I want to do here is, it looks like I'm going to add what we call a calculated field. So rather than pulling directly from one of the tables, I'm maybe going to take two of the columns, and I'm going to do some sort of calculation on them. So to do that, I'm going to basically select the first available field here in my query. I've done that, and then what do I want to do? Okay, so now I'm actually going to go to the expression builder. So I'm looking for my expression builder here. There we go. I got my expression builder. And this is just going to allow me to pick different columns from tables or different functions, whatever I need. I can just edit the text right inside my expression builder. All right. So what do I need to do? Basically, it wants me to open up Event Publishing tables, and it wants me to open up seminar offerings, and then it wants me to double-click total hours. So I've done that, and then it adds that column into my expression. It wants me to do a subtraction operation, and then I'm going to get the hours spent as the other value. So basically, this is going to be, this column is going to represent how many hours left I have in a course. So it takes the total hours to complete the course minus how much I've already done. So I'll select OK. And the other thing I'm probably going to want to do is change the caption so that it will be displayed as not, basically just a default value expression 1, but instead I'm going to change this to hours remaining. Okay. All right. And I think that's it. I probably want to save this, so I will save my query, and I'm going to call this seminar offerings and seminars. Okay, so we got that done, and once again, the whole purpose of creating these queries is so when we make our reports, we can pull data from these queries into the reports. Okay. So if I want to run this query, I can just change it from, well, I guess I can click the run button, and there we go. So we can see here that for this customer, they've signed up for a specific seminar. I should just double click these to make them a little bit bigger. Okay, so customer number here, they've signed up for a specific seminar, and the total hours to complete the seminar would be 3 hours. They've spent 1 hour, so they have 2 hours remaining. Right, so we're ready to create our form, our report, and we're going to be creating our report in report design mode. So this is the most powerful mode there is. It allows you complete control over everything that you're doing. Probably the only disadvantage is you don't really get a sense of exactly how the report's going to look. You have to switch into a different view mode to be able to do that. So basically I can just click on the report design button, and it pops up basically a blank form that I can now begin working on. Now if you notice over on the top left here, there's other views available. So if I were to go to layout view allows you to make changes to your form, and you can modify properties of the different elements. And it also gives you a better sense of what the actual form will look like, but it's not as powerful as design view. And then report view, of course, is what it would actually look like when viewing it. And then, of course, there's print preview as well, which is important because you often want to check as you're making it that the form is going to look correct if you were going to go and print it. All right. So I'm in design mode. All right, let's see what I need to do. So basically I've got my property sheet open over here on the right side. So this is going to be all the properties that I want with my form. Now one thing you want to keep in mind is when you're going to go modify properties for the entire form, right now it's not too bad because we just have the footer and header sections, but once I start adding in different buttons and labels and everything, they'll all show up here. So it's very common that you might have something like a button or a text box selected, and you won't be able to see the options you want. So it's typically you want to go and select report, and then that'll give you the options you want. Now something interesting as well, you'll notice where my cursor is, there's a little black, I guess, box or square right there. And when the report is selected, that will be highlighted. So if I go in and select something else, notice now that that black box isn't selected, and it's actually the page footer that ends up being selected. Okay, so I've got my report there selected, and the next thing I want to do is I'm going to select the query, I believe, that I want to pull my data from. So I'm just checking here. Yeah, so I want to select the record source, and I want to pull my data from book reps and customers. That way any of the labels and text areas, they'll be able to use the different properties that come from that query. Okay. All right, so of course if I want to remove the property sheet, I can show and hide that at any time. All right, and the next thing I'm going to look at is grouping and sorting. So there's a button right here where I can select whether I want to group and sort or not the different components in my report. Now, this is an important function that you guys will need to be able to do. Let's take a quick look at the actual course project. And if I scroll down to the specifications for the reports, we notice here that we have three reports that we have to create. The first one is our employee listing. So this essentially just prints out all the information about different employees. Now there is going to be a switchboard where we can switch between current employees or previous employees, I believe. And then we also have the second report, which is our manager report. So essentially a manager can go in and they can print information about different employees, and they can arrange it based off of the department that the employee works in. They can also sort it by the position that the employee has. So this is a situation here when you do your manager report where you'll have to group your data. You're going to need to group your employees based off of the department that they work on. So that's very similar to what I'm going to show you with some of these reports that I'm creating. Okay, so I've got my group and sort, and when I select that tab, you'll notice at the bottom here I have these buttons where I can add a group, and I can also add a sort as well. So I'm going to click the Add a Group button, and the fields that I get, these are the ones that come from the query that I specified. So if I go back and I look at my property sheet for the report, the book reps and customers, because I selected that as my data source or my record source, those are going to be the options I get. So let me just close that. I'm going to select Add a Group, and I'm going to want to group by book rep number. So I select book rep number, and it also wants me to add a sort. So in this case, I'm going to sort by customer number. Okay, so essentially what this report is going to show, you can probably guess based on what I've done so far, is it's going to show every book rep. But then under each book rep, it's going to show all of the customers that book rep has. And that's the whole idea that I'm grouping my data, right? I'm grouping by book rep, and then I'm gonna, basically what's left is the customer information, and that's gonna be displayed. And by sorting the customer, I'm gonna sort it by customer number. So basically the customers will be arranged in a specific order. All right. Okay, so as I'm going, it's always important, I don't want to get too far. I'm going to save my report, and I'm going to save this as book rep master list as my report name, and there we go. Okay. All right, so basically at this point now, I'm going to begin adding fields to my report. So to do that, I want to click on Add Existing Fields, this button right here. And now I can pretty much drag in these different fields, and what's going to happen is it's going to place a text box with a label beside it onto my form. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to grab book rep number field, and I'm going to drag this over onto my form. And notice I'm placing this in the book rep number header. And that's important. I kind of missed that step a little bit, but if you went back in the video, you'll notice when I create a group for my book rep number, I get this new book rep number heading. And essentially this is where all the data is going to go for my book rep, or essentially what I'm grouping my data by. So I'll go ahead here and I will enter in my book rep number. So it creates a label, and it creates the field that's going to display the book rep number. All right, and now I'm going to go in and add the remaining fields, and these are going to go into the detail section. So the detail section below, this is where all my customer information is going to go. So you just have to bear with me. It's going to take me a few, probably a couple minutes. I'm going to have to drag in a bunch of these fields. So the first one I'm going to do here is customer number. So I'm going to drag that one in. And I'm also going to just increase the size of my, my report here, just so I have a little bit more room to work with. Now you kind of have to be careful when you're adjusting the size of your reports, because if you make them too big, then the report isn't going to fit on a printed page. And when you go to view it in print view, you're gonna notice that not very much data is being displayed. But then you can just go and basically adjust the size of your report, and that should help that. Okay, so I've got customer number. What else here? Customer number. I've got to drag in street. Okay. Now once I have these added in, I can always drag, and basically if I select one and drag it, the label is going to move with it, you'll notice. And of course, this is the exact same thing as when I was creating the forms, right? They have pretty much the same behavior. And of course, if I actually did want to move one of my fields away from its label, I just have to click on the gray square, and that'll then allow me to move one individually. Okay, so street, let's just try to get this done here. City, state, postal code. Okay, and now I'm gonna drag in my customer type. I need resources needed and amount paid. Oops. And current due. Okay. So I've set that up. Now, in terms of alignment, right now when I drag these in, even if I was trying, I'm not going to get them lined up very well. So this is where you can go to, if you notice up here, we have our, on the ribbon, we have report design tools. Well, I can click on the arrange tab, and let's say I wanted to basically align a group of these fields. I'd hold down shift and select these, and then I can go to align, and if I want, I can align them to the left. And then I can select these entries, and I can select the line, and I can left align those as well. And I could do the same. Now this is, of course, I showed you guys this already when we were working on forms. So there's a lot of alignment options. In other words, you don't want to drag and try to position things. You're much better off using selecting the elements you want, and then going in and basically playing around with the alignment to get them looking the way you want them. All right. Okay, so moving on. Let's see here. Next thing I want to do is I'm just going to modify some of these labels. So you notice here when I dragged in book report number, it gave me a label that was BR and then a hash symbol. So that's not really the best. I can go in and I can change this label. So I'm basically just going to cursor into that label, and I'm going to type in book rep number. And I'm going to do the same thing for a customer number. So where it's this one right here, I just cursor in and just type in customer number. Okay. All right. Okay, so that takes care of that. And the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to add in another text box. But this text box we're going to add it in I guess a mode that's called Unbound. So essentially, all of the other text boxes and attributes I've been dragging in, these are, I guess, what are considered bound attributes. In other words, they have a piece of data that is tied to them, all right? But if I were to go to my design tab and I see I have all these widgets up at the top, if I drag one of those directly in, initially this is going to be what's called an unbound. Basically, in this case, there'll be a text box, okay? And then I can go and I can add whatever data I want to it and modify it how I see fit. All right, so bear with me here. Let's just see what it's asking me to do. Okay, so I guess let's just see a picture here. Where am I adding this? Okay. So I'm going to drag a text box right here, and I'm going to drag this over. Sorry, I don't have to drag it. I just click on it, and I'm going to place this up in my book rep number header. So I can click there, and I've placed, as you can see, an Unbound text box into my report. Okay. And now what I need to do is where the text says Unbound, I'm going to cursor in, and it wants me to now basically create some data that I'm going to enter in that's going to be displayed. So the situation here is basically, let's say you had a query and the query returned a first name and it returned a last name, all right? But on your report, maybe you want to display the both names concatenated together with the space between them. So this would pretty much be exactly what I'm going to do here. So in the text box, I use a bracket and I type in first name. So that's going to pull the first name from the query. Then I'm going to use an ampersand, and I'm going to put in a concatenate as space, and then another ampersand and last name. Okay, so there we go. I've added that. I've got a little warning here. That can't be good. Uh-oh, I have an invalid control structure. Okay, maybe I should take a quick look here. So equal, oh, I know why. I'm missing my equals. Okay, so I enter in the equals and then my message goes away. Perfect. Okay. All right, and also I'm going to modify my label here. So right now I just click into the label, and the label is going to be name. I'll just move that so it's a little bit closer to the text box. Okay, perfect. So I'll save that as I go. All right, and I'm going to add in another text box right here. So basically, I'm going to calculate a total amount of money, which is going to be the amount paid plus the current amount due. So this is the amount that each customer owes the book rep. So to do this, I just click on the text box, I drop that in, and I'm going to go equals, and my formula is amount paid plus current due. And the label, I'm going to change that as well, and I'm going to change that to total amount. Okay. So at this point, that's pretty much all we're going to do for this form. We could go on and do some formatting, but that's really not what I want to spend too much time working on. Any of the formatting stuff, it's very easy for you guys to go look that information up online. And apply different themes. And I'm sure you guys have done some of that already. So at this point, if I were to go to, I'll save it first. And then let's say I go to report view. Now what I can see is for each book rep, so the first book rep here is Melina Perez. You can see all of the customers that that belong to this book rep. And because I've grouped by book rep, we see all the customers that belong to that book rep. Right, so several here, and now we come to the next book rep, and this is Robert Chin, and then we can see all of the different customers here. Now, one thing that pops out when I'm looking at this is that the total amount, because we added in, we just basically did a calculated field there in that text box. You can notice right away that the number isn't formatted properly, right? This is just using a regular number formatting where it should be using a currency formatting. So we should probably go in and fix that before we move on. So I'm going to go back to design view. I'm going to select this text box, and I'm going to go to my property sheet. And let's see here. I should be able to see the format. So if I click on format, we can drop down and we see a bunch of different options. And of course, I want the currency option. So I will select that. I'll save my form. And now when I go back and view it, now I see a nicely formatted total amount right there. Okay, so that is we created a couple queries. And then we went ahead and created this first report. Okay. All right, let's get started on our second report. So this second report we're going to make is actually somewhat similar to the one we previously did. It's going to use the same query, it turns out, and it's also going to group by the book rep number as well. What's different about this one is it's going to go into more detail in terms of creating subtotals for each of the groups. So in other words, for all of the customers that belong to a book rep, we're going to do subtotals, which totals up several of their columns and displays them for each group. We're also going to see how to do a grand total. So basically a footer that goes on the entire report where we total up all the values that are displayed. Okay, so let's just go through the initial steps here. So obviously I'm going to go to my, my create button, and I'm going to create a report design. There we go. Okay. And then I am going to go to, let's see here. Okay, so I'm going to go to my property sheet, and I'm going to select my source. So the source, once again, is going to be book reports and customers. So I've got that, that selected. Okay. And I'll close the property sheet, and now I go to my add existing fields. And let's see here, what do I want to add to my report here? So it says tap or click the add a group button to display the list of, so sorry. So I'm going to do I skipped a step here. So I'm going to go to my group and sort, and just as we did before, I'm going to select add a group, and I want to group by book rep number. So that is selected. And then for add a sort, once again, I'm going to also want to sort by customer number. Okay, so I've got those selected. Now you'll notice when I added group by book rep number, I ended up receiving a book rep number header. That's just one of the default properties. You'll notice down here I have several options that I'm grouping by. If I click more, you'll notice that I have a header section. If I go without a header section, then that disappears. Typically though, you're gonna want a header section so you can have separate headers for each of your groupings. Now you'll notice here it says without a footer section. If I add with a footer section, then I get a specific footer where I can put basically subtotals for each of my groups if I want to do that. But for now, I will leave it without a footer section. All right. So I've done that. I'm going to remove the group and sort tab. And I'm going to now go to my save button, and I'm going to save this as it says discount report. So I'll click OK. All right. So next thing I'm going to do is add some fields into my report. So I'm going to click on Add Existing Fields, and the first one I'm going to add here is going to be, let's see, looks like book rep number. So I'll drag this into my book rep number header, and I'll place it right there, pretty much. Okay. All right. Now, the layout that we're going to use for this report is a little bit different. Now, some of the key parts of our report, you can see these different sections here. So, for example, like page header, book report number header, detail. And these are pretty self-explanatory once you've made a couple reports. But basically, as we know, page header, this is going to be displayed at the top of every page. So sometimes you may want to place all of your labels, okay, across your page header, and then only have values in your book rep number header and in your detail sections. That's one format that you can use when laying out your report. Now, another thing that's interesting, if I want to do that, that means I would want to drag this label here. So this book report label, I would want to place it in my page header. It's actually interesting though, Access won't let me do that. It won't let me to actually drag it up there. What I have to do is select it, and then I'm going to cut it, and then I'm going to move up to my page header and paste it. And then I can rearrange it as needed. So I've placed this up in my page header. I think that's pretty much where I want it to go. And I'm now going to drag over my book rep number so it is laid out basically underneath it. And for this label, I'm going to modify it so it includes a little bit more text. So I'm going to say rep number. Now, one thing that you might want to do, sometimes you might want to split onto 2 lines your text. And to do that, all you have to do is hold down Shift and hit Enter, and there we go. Now the rep number is going to be displayed on 2 lines. Okay. All right, so I've added the book rep number. The next thing I'm going to want to do though now is add in my actual details. So this is going to basically be all of the customer data. So to do that, let's see here. Right, I'm going to get the first name. I'm going to get the last name. Now, one trick I'm going to show you here, I'm going to hold down Control, and I'm going to select basically a whole bunch of these all at once. So I also want amount paid and current due. And now I can just drag these in and boom, all of them at the same time rather than having to go and drag them one by one. Okay. All right, so that's pretty much, I can close this field list because this is all the fields that I'm gonna need, it looks like. And now I'm gonna lay these out basically in a pattern where all of the labels are gonna go up along my page header, and then all of the field elements, the text boxes, these are going to go either in the book rep header if it belongs to the book rep table, or it's gonna go in the detail, and they're gonna line up in columns essentially. So this will take me, just have to bear with me here, my drag and drop skills, see how quickly I can do this. All right, so let's do the book rep ones first. So that's gonna be first name and last name. So I'm gonna take first name, I'm gonna cut it, and I'm gonna paste it up here, and then I can drag it into position. And then I'll take my first name and I will move it up. Now I need to resize these a little bit so that they line up a bit better. And I'll place my book rep there, or sorry, first name right there. Okay, there I go. And I'll do the same thing with last name. Right, and I'll move this one up. Okay, and next thing, customer number. Now customer number goes with customer. So this is part of the data that's grouped. So I want this in my detail section, but for the label, it doesn't matter because all the labels are going up top. So I'll bring that label there. And of course, I probably want to say customer number. And I can move the customer number then up to here. And customer name. Okay, and I'll move that one up as well. Okay, amount paid. Now, of course, I would want to be using, once I get these sort of laid out roughly, I'd want to go ahead and then use the alignment tools. So in the Arrange tab, I'd want to select a bunch of them, and then I can perform alignments on them. to make it, you know, look a bit more reasonable. All right, so amount paid, I'll bring this one up here. Now I'm beginning to run out of room a little bit, so I'll go ahead and just increase the size of my report just ever so slightly. And current due, I'll remove that, paste it. And bring that one up there. All right, so pretty much all of the data is laid out. Now, I didn't do a very neat job of it, but you can kind of see what I'm going for, what I'm trying to achieve with the layout here. All right. Okay, now another property that you guys should probably be aware of is what's called the can grow property. So in this case, we have, for example, customer name, and as we know, names can be short, they can be really long, they can be really, really long. So in the case of the customer name, I probably want to go to my property sheet, and if I scroll all the way down here, I'm just looking for it, there should be right here, can grow. So I can select this to yes. So essentially what this means is this text box has the ability to expand based on the amount of text inside it. If it exceeds the actual width, the text box will get larger. Okay. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to change this detail section. See all this white space here? I don't want to leave that because that'll actually show up in my report. So I'm going to drag and minimize that size so I have less space there. Okay, moving on. All right, so now we're actually going to start adding in our subtotals and our totals. So we have, I guess, what's called a subtotal, which will go with each group of customers. So we can total up the amount paid and the current due. And then we can also do what's called a grand total. So we'll just total everything up for the entire report. So let's do that. All right. So to do that, I have to go to the group and sort. And right now, I don't have a footer displayed on my report for my book report. Okay, I have the header there, but I don't have a footer. So right now, there's no place where I can put in these subtotals. So I need to go, by clicking the More button, I get all these other options that go with my grouping. And I'm gonna add in, so right now where it says without a footer section, I'm gonna set that to with a footer section. So now I get a book rep number footer. So this is where I can put in subtotals for each of the groups. So now that I have that there, all right. So let's see here. I'm going to drag in a text box. So click that text box, not drag in, sorry, click that text box. And I'm gonna place this one over by current due. Okay, so it's an unbound text box. I'm going to now put in my formula. So I'm gonna say equals sum, and I'm going to total up current due. All right, so I've got that. And I also want to put in a text box for the amount paid. So I guess I might as well just select that, drag in another one. Actually, no, let's not do that yet. So I also need to change this label. So the label is going to say subtotal. And now I will drag in add my extra text box. So this text box here is going to be equals sum, and I'm summing up amount paid. Okay, I'll just spread these out a little bit. Now with the amount paid, I don't need this extra label here, so I can just right click on that and delete it because I already have my subtotal label. All right, so I've got my subtotals all set up. Now once again, I probably want to remove some of this white space. So I can reposition those, move them up a little bit, and then squish it even more if I wanted to. All right. Okay, now in addition, I'm going to select both of these text boxes, and I'm going to go to my property sheet, and up at the top here we can see that we have a format. I'm going to set this to currency, and for decimal places I will set 2 decimal places. Okay. All right, so the next thing I want to do now is I need to add in my grand total. So to do that, I'm going to click anywhere on the report, and there is a report header footer. So I'm going to select that. Okay, that is not what okay, so that has report header. All right, I guess that's fine because I get my report footer with that as well, which is what I need. So for my report footer, I'm going to basically duplicate those operations by summing the amount paid and the current due, but I'm going to place them in the report footer, which means they're going to be there for the entire report. So I will hold down, actually, so basically what I want to do then is I can actually copy these and place them down there, and that should do it. So one trick I can use, if I go onto the left side of my form here, and I click outside here, it's going to highlight those by default. I can then right click and copy, and then I can go to my report footer, and I should be able to paste these in. Okay, so it pastes them. Obviously it doesn't paste them in a very nice position for me, but I'll just move these over. Okay, there we go. Okay. All right, so at this point I can now go and view the report. Now I haven't done any fancy formatting other than just laying out the report and setting up the data. So I'll save it and I'll go to my report view, and let's just go through and see what we have here. So we've grouped by the book rep number, and then we can see, okay, unfortunately the amount paid is, that column is being, is a little bit too small. So let's go back to our design view and we will fix this here. So let's just spread these out a little bit. Okay, amount paid is a bit bigger. Just move this one over as well. All right, okay, save it, and let's go back and view the report. All right, so we have our book rep, and then we can see all the customers for that book rep. We can see a subtotal for each group that belongs to the book rep for all those customers. And then we can see the additional book reps and their customers. And then at the bottom here, we have, now there's one mistake I can see. I left the label as subtotal. That needs to be changed to grand total. And which indicates that these are the totals for all of the different groups for every value shown here. So let's just go back and quickly change that. So instead of subtotal, it's going to be grand total. All right, I'll save that, and let's go back and view that. And there we go. I've got now displays grand total. All right, so that's basically just a run through creating a couple reports. We focused on adding groups to the reports. We looked a little bit at the different components in a report, such as the page header, the detail, the group, whatever you group by, the header that goes with that, the footer that goes with that. We also have a page footer and then a report footer. And these are all fairly self-explanatory. Okay, so that's going to be it for this video. So later on in the week, we'll look a little bit more at the actual switchboard that you're going to need to create that's going to customize the reports that you'll generate in your project.